Hello, this is DC Hammer, and today on the DC Hammer Show, we continue to twist the tail of the Red Dragon, taking a deeper dive into the murky realms exposed in the Hudson Institute report, the Chinese Communist Party's foreign interference operations, how the U.S. and other democracies should respond. So let's continue the revelation of the most dangerous assault on American freedom, and yes, I know the argument can be made, that's either Mueller's American Inquisition or Nancy the Gavel Pelosi's blossoming reign of terror in the House of Representatives, but actually it is the decades-long and intensifying onslaught of the Communist Chinese to destroy the United States with the help of dragon buddies like Dinosaur Dianne Feinstein and then dominate the world. So today in Chapter 4, we go on to the Communist Chinese Party's interference and influence in the United States. The main public and media focus, if you haven't noticed, in other words, if you've been living under a rock, you've been on an island somewhere, you've been in a coma, and you've just come out of that coma or out from under that rock, or you've just landed here from that island, and you pick up a newspaper, you look at what's going on the radio and the television, you're going to hear the word Russia. And that's pretty much, and then Trump. So you're going to hear Trump, Russia, probably by this point in time, tens of thousands of times those words together have been mentioned by the Marxist screaming media. And the most interesting thing is that as they continue to falsely point our attention towards Russia and infer this complete nonsense that there was some kind of collusion which isn't illegal, or some kind of relationship that they don't like, the deep state doesn't like, or the leftists don't like, or the Democrats don't like, between Trump and Russia, that means everybody goes to the slammer. We can just forget about all of that corruption from the Clinton Foundation. We can forget about those emails and what Hillary Clinton did with them. That is unimportant. What is important is that there may have been conversations between members of the incoming Trump administration and members of the continuing Putin administration, and that can't be allowed. Now, we can allow Barack Hussein Obama to, when he believes he's off mic with the Russian ambassador, whisper to him back when he was running for re-election. He can whisper, just wait until this election's over. I got that in the bag. We've already got all the voting machines squared away. We've already got those illegal voters squared away. So I'm going to definitely be re-elected as president. And even though I've failed in my first 4 years, getting ready to fail for another 4 years, you just wait, because I'm going to have a lot more latitude in the second half of my reign than I did in the first half. And by the way, I'm not colluding with you right now. I'm just mentioning it. But if Trump were to have that same conversation with that Russian ambassador as Mike Flynn had with a contact that he had within the Russian government, that's verboten. Everybody goes to jail, perp walk them, Mueller investigation, come down on them like a ton of bricks. Even though it's not illegal what took place, we're going to make it illegal, and the way we make it illegal is pounding in the press on a daily basis with false narratives, fake news, stories that never happened, but we're going to continue the relentless drumbeat of Trump, Russia, and at the same time, the Communist Chinese and their puppets in the Senate of the United States government, like Dinosaur Dianne Feinstein and others, continue to promote the intellectual exchange, the social interaction, the way forward for two of the largest organizations on the planet, the Red Communist Government of China and the once democratic government of the United States, to continue to have these plans together. It's not nefarious, it's not illegal. We could, sell you our military secrets, sell you our intellectual product, allow you to force us that if we're going to do business in your country, that we have to give you all of our secrets in order to do that, because we're the big dog, we're the Red Dragon. And you're just a little puppet state, or soon-to-be puppet state, next province of China, and everything is just ducky. So there are journalists who are really familiar with what's going on in China. For example, Chris Chappell, with China Uncensored, does continuous reporting on what's truly happening with the communist state, what's going on, what the Red Dragon is up to. But there aren't too many others who have the same open-minded approach and truly do report the downside of what China is doing, the illegal activities, the tyrannical, bloodthirsty approach that they have not only to the outside world, to the countries that they have yet to destroy or in the process of doing, they also use those same tactics internally on their own citizens. The Uyghurs in northwest China and what they've done to that entire province. Other areas of communist China that have been decimated. All resistance crushed. Entire groups like Falun Gong, an innocent group of people that like to sit around and do yoga and concentrate on nutrition. For them to be crushed starting 20 years ago as they went from being the darling of the communist state to enemy number one, and with those people not only being at the minimum harassed, tortured, imprisoned, even to the point of having their organs harvested in order to be sold on the black market to keep the money coming into the coffers of the Red Dragon. And where do you think journalists in the United States are on any of these critical issues? There have been certain voices within American politics. Senator Mark Rubio, Republican from Florida, who is the chairman of the Congressional Executive Commission on China, who has been pointing a spotlight, shining the light on the darkness of what is Communist Chinese Party interference in the United States. But there have been few others that have actually been tracking what he's talking about and actually understanding how dangerous it is. And again, we go into the 3 C's of interference, that being covert, coercive, or corrupt, and I would say and instead of or, with those 3 connecting tissues. And the state-run propaganda networks within China, China Daily and their other publications, all news outlets in communist China are completely state-controlled. You can see by this graph the influence the Red Dragon has had, and they call this the red spectrum of political influence and interference. It runs all the way from university funding and language programs using the students as spies overseas, party state media, think tanks, and their nefarious activities to prevent the darkness from coming to light, their lobbying efforts, the willing enablers they have in different countries around the world, the United Front affiliated organizations, overseas party cells that they have already initiated. There's active party cells in many countries, Western countries, the United States, New Zealand, Australia. They set up anonymous political contributing organizations, and at the far end, they resort to bribes and espionage in order to get their way through this entire network that represents the tentacles of the Red Dragons. Again, the combination of the Red Dragon and the Red Octopus. The Red Dragon spewing its fire, and the Red Octopus stretching out its tentacles to strangle its enemies. So going back over 20 years, the Communist Chinese Party has interfered greatly in United States elections. You're not going to hear that by the Marxist screaming media. They only want to talk about Russia. They've gone from being Russia lovers up until a point in early 1990s, 1991, when the wall came down, when the former communist state, which they loved so much, became a more open society. And so now they love China because China has taken the baton pass from the Soviet communists and is now the most preeminent tyrannical communist state on the planet. And the Red Dragon is really tricky when it deals with political donations and how to get them inserted into foreign elections. They will even use Buddhist monasteries. They will use any technique to funnel their cash directly to, the Democrat National Committee. That's what happens starting 2 decades ago, back during the Clinton administration. That's exactly what's going on, what went on in order to get Clinton reelected. But of course, the United States intelligence community was well aware of the plans back then. But with players in place like the same names that you hear today, Mueller, Comey, Clapper, would you expect those people to have been acting any differently then than they are today? So the Red Dragon used loopholes in our system, techniques involving skirting the regulations of the Internal Revenue Service, using their LLCs, their limited liability companies that have sprung out all over the planet in order to funnel funds and to do their interference, using the American employees of these U.S. subsidiaries in order to collect and to funnel illegal political contributions through PACs, political action committees. to the tune of over $21 million in the 2016 election cycle alone. Again, you are not going to hear this from the Marxist screaming media. And isn't it interesting that some of those super PACs supported people like, Jeb Bush, to keep the Bush-Clinton dynasty still working, the deep state fully in control of the government. Jeb Bush was their hand-selected nominee to become the President of the United States back in 2016. And although the Federal Election Commission may have taken notice of some of these activities, they sure haven't done anything to take action against these activities. So recently there's an increasing number of Chinese companies, in other words, state-owned Red Dragon properties, that have been joining with United States lobbying or trade organizations, gaining political influence, continuing to co-opt willing accomplices here on this side of the ocean in order to get them to put American interests on the back burner and to put on the front burner those interests of the Communist Chinese Party, and to use business people, permanent residents of the United States, people here again on student visas, any red Chinese tool that they can use in order to influence our elections they use. Once again, completely under the radar. And it's interesting, isn't it, though, that you have names that keep coming up, like McAuliffe in Virginia, one of Bill Clinton's champions of undemocracy. Terry McAuliffe, governor of Virginia, and what he is doing. The Brzezinski Institute. And it's interesting, you've got on MSNBC Zygmunt Brzezinski's daughter, Brzezinski, who gave us the Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran, who was the initiator of Al-Qaeda, who also then was involved in various deep state activities and continues through his institutes, the Brzezinski family, through their institutes and their microphone that they have on MSNBC in order to continue to drag us down. The names that you could state that are the actual participants in that process, the willing American enablers of what China is doing. And again, these efforts would not be successful without these people. Without people like Dinosaur Dianne Feinstein, without Bill and Hillary Clinton, without people like Terry McAuliffe, without the Democrat National Committee, without Debbie Wasserman Schultz, without Donna Brazile, these efforts would not succeed. And it's not just on the Democrat side. There are people like Senator Steve Daines, Republican from Montana, who apparently was easily, influenced by a $200 million contract for Montana beef that apparently, out of the blue then, he decided to host a delegation of Chinese Communist Party officials, issues involving Tibet, and would lead some people to believe that the senator intentionally helped Communist China, the Red Dragon, present its narrative to temper criticism from Washington about the treatment that the Communist Chinese have given to Tibet. In a previous episode, I talked about how Apple Incorporated, their biggest market outside of North America is China, and has acquiesced to the Red Dragon censorship demands, and has even taken action internally within Red China to enable it to enforce government policing of its internet. And CEO Tim Cook of Apple appeared and gave the opening remarks at China's World Internet Conference, praising the Red Dragon's efforts to create a quote-unquote open digital economy, while ignoring the Red Dragon's increased internet censorship. The hypocrisy is just unbelievable. So the long-term aim of China, Red Dragon, in these operations, after they have already forced American companies to kowtow to the Chinese censorship demands, from Marriott to Delta Airlines, they all cave as soon as China wags its finger, threatens to kick them out or to take other action that would affect them on the business side. And these American businesses then immediately crumble before the Red Dragon, bow before it, and do whatever the Red Dragon demands. So on the surface, a lot of the steps that Communist China has taken in the last 30 years to make it appear that they are sponsoring capitalism. This is actually socialist capitalism. It is not free market, free organizations operating within the parameters of the world community. These are state-owned, as in communist operations, run from top to bottom. Their goals are, again, to dominate foreign countries, to take over entire sectors of business, to violate all the laws of their host countries in a parasitical fashion, to steal intellectual property, to continue to allow those foreign countries to spend billions and hundreds of billions of dollars on research and development, only for the Red Dragon then to use those developments in their own organizations without having to have done the research. They just steal it from the American companies or force the American companies to transfer that technology to the Red Dragon's entities in order to do business in this burgeoning market known as Red China. Once again, one of the primary objectives of the Red Dragon sending students to foreign countries, you would think that it's for those people to gain knowledge, to become leaders in certain technical fields, return to the motherland just to help them in benign ways to grow their economy, to increase their mind base, the level of learning that they have in order to apply technical skills back in the motherland. But it goes way beyond that. They are not only using these students as spies, they are also undermining academic freedom in the countries to which they send their students. And the United States, which has the best research and higher education institutions in the world, is their prime target. They stifle criticism of the Communist Chinese government, of what the Communist Chinese Red Dragon is doing around the world. And they use the visa system, the tuition fee system to their advantage. The Red Dragon is one smart and devious creature. And even though back in 1989, when those pictures were all over your television about the Tiananmen Square shooting, the massacre that was taking place, the tyrannical crushing of the student democracy movement, since then, the Communist Party has been working to expunge that memory, for the students coming abroad to not even know that it took place, for an entire new generation of communists to have no idea what the Red Dragon has done in the past and what it's capable of doing to them in the future if they don't toe the line and do exactly what the Red Dragon demands. Yes, there will be occasional campus events that protest the tyrannical reign of Emperor Xi, but they are few and far between compared to the Communist Chinese Party's reactions. And yes, there are some organizations like the Chinese Student and Scholarship Association that spring up and actually shine light on the darkness that is the Emperor Xi Red Dragon organization. But there's backlash against those student organizations if they say one word against the Chinese state. And whenever there is criticism against the Red Dragon, again, spews its false narrative that this is only due to racism and corrosion that's caused by Western ideas, that they need to guard against that corrosion, these students and the people to whom that they woo onto their side. And it's relentless. It is never ending, but just understand that it is there, and the only way we can stop it is by ending the corruption on our side, by ensuring that these deep state puppets like Dinosaur Diane, Feinstein, Jeb Bush, and others, that they are removed from power, that they are held accountable for any illegal activities that they have performed, and they are not allowed to participate in our running of our government. And the Red Dragon knows how to use its pocketbook as a weapon against anybody that would be against it. When you have prestigious universities in the United States, such as Stanford University, receiving more than $32 million in monetary gifts from the Red Dragon over the last 6 years, and Harvard University receiving $55 million through a combination of contracts and monetary gifts from the Red Dragon, is it any surprise that the influence of Communist China is not resisted at those institutions? And the Red Dragon knows how to label things in order to fool the foreign nations into actually supporting the teaching that they are doing in the open to perpetuate their tyrannical and bloodthirsty regime, such as the Confucius classrooms and Confucius institutes. There are over 516 institutes, Confucius institutes, over 1,000 Confucius classrooms that have been established in over 140 countries since 2004. So how do you boil a frog? Well, once again, you turn up the heat slowly, put it in the pot, turn up the heat slowly, and do it until the frog expires. I don't know how much longer and how hot that heat is in the pot that's boiling on our stove, but I'm starting to sweat. So when you see the name Confucius Institute, and you think that that would be some kind of a meditation organization, maybe a Falun Gong offshoot, be advised, nothing could be further from the truth. These are just, once again, another tentacle of the Red Dragon / octopus stretching out to get its stranglehold on foreign nations using educational systems and their teaching of their communist ways under the radar throughout the countries of the world, including the United States. And even with the change in administration that took place in January of 2017, when you would think that putting new people into place that had these federal government institutions, such as the FBI, with Christopher Wray being appointed by President Trump, you would think that they would completely change their tune and would take a stronger and realistic stance against the incursions that are taking place by the Red Dragon here on our soil. But when you have a milquetoast like Christopher Wray stating that the FBI is merely watching warily the activities of dozens of Confucius institutes, well, I would think that it would take stronger action than that, but considering that Christopher Wray has spent most of his time hiding under his desk for the past 2 years, perhaps this is as much as we could hope for. And outside of the classrooms, the Communist Chinese, the Red Dragon, is using professional organizations such as the American Association of University Professors, who I'm sure are in complete alignment with the Communist Chinese Party's stance on a variety of issues. And even if those organizations may come out at times and be critical of Confucius Institutes or the other initiatives by the Communist Chinese, I still believe that many of their members are on the wrong side. The use of think tanks in the United States and other countries goes way back as a method of combining research brain power, enabling supposedly independent research to take place outside of the government, outside of the influence of American business organizations, and for studies to be performed, for deep dives into different topics to be performed by experts in the field, who then provide reports that can be studied by others and used then to make policy recommendations and make differences happen within the country. But the influence that the Communist Chinese have had on think tanks merely turns those institutions into another tentacle of the Red Dragon / octopus and its interference and influence operations overseas. And once again, as reported in the previous episode, the United Front work, this is the unification effort that succeeded decades ago, using the model of the Bolsheviks from the period of Soviet communism that started in 1917 up to when the wall came down. The need for various competing factions within the communist state to work together towards common ends of communism. That model was adopted by the Communist Chinese Party, and the United Front work was a way of bringing together divergent communist entities within Communist China and to blend them together and to ensure that they're all on the same page to achieve their common goals. Although these think tanks accept donations, accept money in order to perform their functions. And although a few people, like Senator Ted Cruz, are aware of their antics, the amount of money that the Red Dragon has pushed overseas and the number of these think tanks, institutions that have been co-opted by Communist Chinese influence is undeniable. Another fact that is undeniable is the narrative change that's taken place in Hollywood and how the Chinese propaganda, and in fact the overtaking of movie studios by the Red Chinese, has resulted in content provided by American media to be very Red Dragon leaning. So entire American production companies, film producers, have been co-opted by the Communist Chinese Party. And many of the films, the television products that you see are going to be awash with narratives that support the Communist Chinese initiatives. Investment groups, Hong Kong based and elsewhere, continue to use their influence in order to censor the products that are put out to the public through these media organizations and spread Communist Chinese propaganda in order to get their way. Is it possible that the New York Times, Washington Post, the Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal, that these once veritable media outlets, these publications, have been so indoctrinated by the Communist Chinese through paid advertisements and other inducements that at times these organizations that have become strapped for cash are perfectly willing to become accomplices in this propaganda network once the money starts to flow? And now the DC Hammer Show is available as an audio podcast. Just go to Podcast Garden or iTunes and search for DC Hammer or News Network Analysis Associates, NNAA.